The Washington DeMond Williams standoff is on. So what do we do next? We've got answers. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get your great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network on the face of planet Earth. We're thrilled to be here and glad you are as well. So in our most recent episodes, if you've been here with us, and thank you to all of our everydayers, we've kind of gone through this DeMond Williams saga. The Cliff's Notes version is LSU looked like they were going to get a commitment from Sam Leavitt, the Arizona State transfer. At the 11th hour, DeMond Williams, the Washington quarterback, of whom Lane Kiffin is a massive fan, and at one point had committed to Ole Miss. DeMond Williams goes in the portal. The Sam Leavitt ship seemingly has sailed. He is presently on a visit to Tennessee on Rocky Top. Washington pursuing legal action to prevent DeMond Williams from leaving because he's already signed his agreement for his rev share contract at UW, and LSU needs quarterback. So what's happening now and what's next? What are the next steps? So let's sort of dive into this in this episode. So thank you for being here with us. Also, by the way, Brendan Sorsby's offer from LSU got leaked to Ross Dellinger of Yahoo. And I don't think that had the net effect whoever leaked it thought it was going to have. And I'm going to get to that too in just a little bit. So let's start with DeMond Williams, though. Okay, so what I can tell you is DeMond Williams has a visit planned to LSU, even though he is not in the transfer portal. And when you are not in the transfer portal, you can't legally have contact, or I guess another school can't have contact with you. But DeMond Williams is like, whatevs. He's going to visit LSU. That is set up. There was also a report from Pete Nakos of On3 that Miami is in the mix too. So remember, DeMond Williams in the portal. When you look at sort of the top tier quarterbacks that are in the transfer portal in this cycle, Sam Leavitt, the number one in the On3 portal rankings, the number one quarterback, still uncommitted, as we know. Number two quarterback's Byron Brown. He's going to Auburn. Drew Mestamaker is going to Oklahoma State. Josh Hoover going from TCU to Indiana. Sorsby, we know, is going to Texas Tech. There's DeMond Williams. Dylan Raiola, uncommitted. DJ Lagway, uncommitted. Rocco Beck's going to Penn State. Deuce Knight, uncommitted. Kenny Minchie's going to Kentucky. Cutter Boley's going to Arizona State. So you get the drift. But ultimately, when you look at the top tier programs, elite level programs that are still looking for a quarterback, we got LSU out there clearly. And remember, you have two playoff teams who have quarterbacks that are about to have their eligibility expire that are going to be looking for a signal caller. Oregon, Miami. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, but Indiana's already taken Josh Hoover via the portal. And then Ole Miss has all their eggs in the Trinidad Chambliss basket, hoping he gets his waiver to play another year. More on that in just a second. So remember, you're talking about DeMond Williams, who's at Washington. He's already in the geographic region of Oregon. And if Phil Knight wants to go throw a pile of money at him, he technically could do that. And there is this report that DeMond Williams is going to visit Miami. The worst case scenario for LSU is you get in a bidding war with Miami and Oregon. Oregon has Phil Knight money and they can pay whatever. And Miami's had a lot of success with transfer quarterbacks. So is Oregon, by the way. Think about it. Oregon this year, Dante Moore has him in the playoff. A year ago, they had a transfer quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, had him in the playoff. Before that, Bo Nix, transfer quarterback, was a Heisman finalist. Look down at Miami. You have Carson Beck, transfer quarterback. A year ago, you had Cam Ward, transfer quarterback, came the number one pick of the draft. Point is, these are two programs that can sell. Hey, if you're a transfer, come here. We can make you profitable. We can win games, make you profitable. So, no, like LSU can as well. I mean, Burrow and Daniels are both transfers, both Heisman winners, and the number 1 and 2 picks in the draft. So I'm not saying LSU can't offer that. Clearly they can. But and Kiffin has the relationship with Damon Williams. I'm just saying you're potentially going to have competition for Damon Williams from those two programs on opposite corners of the country who have deep NIL pockets, are in desperate need of quarterbacks, and have success in the transfer market as well. So worth watching. Now, how much is it going to cost for Damon Williams? I don't have the answer to that. Now, there are rumors out there today that people have thrown out the $6 million number. I can't confirm that, and I haven't had a single credible person say that. Let me be clear. I'm not telling you that's not the number. I'm just telling you nobody credible has said that, and I haven't heard that. I've seen internet rumors, but what I can tell you is based on a report from Ross Dellinger that Damon Williams was the deal he signed at Washington was $4 million. It is certainly plausible when Williams said he was entering the portal because he had to do what was best for himself. It is reasonable to assume the offer is more than $4 million. So if the deal he signed at Washington was $4 million, certainly the offer from LSU or whoever is going to be more than $4 million. Is it 6? I don't know. But it's going to be in that range, certainly. The other thing circumstantially that's worth watching, while Washington is going to pursue this legal action against Damon Williams, I think they are also smart enough to realize a couple of things. Number one, a lot of people have suggested, why would you force a quarterback who doesn't want to, or any player who doesn't want to be on your team to stay? So I think they understand that's not wise. Similarly, like we've talked about with Xavier Lucas, who a year ago was playing at Wisconsin, missed the portal window, transfers to Miami. Wisconsin sues for tampering. Lucas, despite not being in the portal, just transferred as a student to Miami and played football, is going to play in the national semifinal against Ole Miss, has played in every game this year. So I look at it and go, Washington probably realizes that Damon Williams won't be their quarterback next year. So they have to pursue other options. So Washington is going to host Bo Pribula on a visit. You know Bo Pribula. Started his career at Penn State, transferred to Missouri this year, got injured, back in the portal. Now is going to take a visit to Washington, which tells you Washington is covering all their bases, acknowledging effectively that Damon Williams probably isn't going to be back for his third year in Seattle. So what do? They look elsewhere. If you're LSU, though, you kind of look forward and go, okay, well, you desperately at this point want Damon Williams. Well, what if the legalities here don't go in your favor and you have to pivot? What is out there now? That's what I want to touch on next. And by the way, an illustration of why LSU choosing to move on from Trinidad Chambliss, as intoxicating as that likely was probably the right decision. We're going to get to that. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions that you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in. The personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You will be shocked when Rocket Money shows you what you're paying in subscriptions you forgot about. And it'll save you money almost instantly. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Rocket Money LSU.com/lockedon. Okay, I want to dive here into the what's next for LSU at quarterback if, for whatever reason, the Damon Williams situation goes awry. But I do want to thank you, as always, for making Locked On LSU your first listen of the day. I want to thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network, and remind you, if you haven't already, to go check out the Everydayer Club. It gives you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On listeners. It's compatible with Apple, Spotify, other podcast apps. And there's an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. So go check out the link in the show notes to learn more. The worst-case scenario for LSU at this point, we think about best case, which is you land Damon Williams, a guy that Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. love, and he's your starter for 2 years, and you go win games and maybe a championship. The worst case scenario is you had a bird in hand with Sam Leavitt, and you decided to look the other way because Damon Williams was there. So you let Sam Leavitt go in hopes of pursuing Williams. And what if Williams goes away too? Well, now you are in trouble. I can tell you the most common name that I've heard is Deuce Knight. Now, Deuce Knight was a 5-star who signed with Auburn in the class of 2025. He played in 2 games, started 1. The 1 game he started was against Mercer, an FCS school, and he counted for 6 touchdowns, threw for 2, ran for 4. Deuce Knight is a physical freak show. But he, wherever he plays next year, will be a redshirt freshman, and he's only played in 2 games. So you have a major question about whether or not he can lead you to a championship, being a very physically gifted player, but a young player without experience. It's also worth noting that I have been told if Trinidad Chambliss isn't granted his waiver at Ole Miss, then Deuce Knight would be their next target. Speaking of Chambliss, it was reported on Wednesday that, and had tipped to Ross Dellinger, who's done an amazing job, our buddy who, formerly of The Advocate in Baton Rouge, now of Yahoo, who's just probably the best college football reporter in the country. Dellinger reported that attorney Tom Mars has now filed a 3rd waiver, or a waiver for a 3rd time with the NCAA on behalf of Trinidad Chambliss. Y'all, and listen, I know that there are a lot of Ole Miss fans that are listening to and watching this show now. I know because I see the comments, I see your tweets, I know you're there. And welcome. Thank you for being here. And I know that Ole Miss, there's this little brother syndrome. Having a great season, by the way. No shade. Seriously, it's amazing to watch this team. They're awesome. They're so much fun to watch, objectively. But Ole Miss hasn't won anything of significance in 60 years. They haven't won a conference title, haven't been to Atlanta. It's basically Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, the only schools that haven't gone to Atlanta. There is a lot of little brother syndrome. And they're not going to like to hear that. And I know you're watching, Ole Miss fans, and you're not going to like that. And I get why you don't like that. But there's some truth in facing your reality of what is life. And so when I've said things like LSU made the decision to move on from Trinidad Chambliss, a lot of Ole Miss fans have not liked me saying that. But that is the reality of what happened. Over the weekend, LSU had a decision to make. Actually, as the portal opened, they had a decision to make. Do you wait on Trinidad Chambliss to see if he gets his waiver? And even if he does he commit to your school? Or do you move on? Now, I've told you before that there was a verbal agreement in place. I haven't told you the dollar amount. It was $3.85 million. Trinidad Chambliss was coming to Baton Rouge. Again, Ole Miss fans don't want to believe that. They want to believe that he's Ole Miss red and blue through and through, and he owes Ole Miss everything and all sweet and kind and all that stuff. But I'll remind you, this was Trinidad Chambliss before the Tulane game when asked if he got his waiver, if he'd be back in Oxford.
I would have to consider what the best situation is for me, what I feel most comfortable with, who I trust the most, and just get a feel for, every possibility, really. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, no doubt. Die hard. Ole Miss through and through. Like, you can be you can be real and acknowledge reality, which is the fact that Trinidad Chambliss was going to follow Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss to Baton Rouge. Georgia, Ole Miss beat Georgia. They advanced. It delayed all these announcements. And ultimately, LSU had a decision to make. Do we hold off, hoping Chambliss gets the waiver and comes to Baton Rouge, or do you move on? They made the decision to move on. They brought in Sorsby. They brought in Levitt. Now they're after Devon Williams. It's what it is. But if you missed the news from Ross Dellinger, Chambliss's attorney has now filed a third waiver with the NCAA. And before Ole Miss played Georgia, the folks I had conversations with very close to the Ole Miss program were adamant. They felt because they knew Chambliss had a verbal agreement with LSU, or his agent did, whatever. And so they were adamant he wasn't going to get the waiver, going so far as to say that part of the waiver process is if you're filing for a medical, like how else would I know this? If you're filing for a medical, then in this case, Ferris State, the school, would have to validate the reason you didn't play that year was the medical condition described. And nobody at Ferris State would validate this on behalf of Trinidad Chambliss because it's not why he played. He had tonsillitis. Like, that's not why he sat out. He took a redshirt year because he wasn't the best player. Now, he became awesome, and he is, but that doesn't mean the NCAA is going to grant that waiver. Now, they may sue and they may win or they may lose, but there's uncertainty. And a third waiver filed now on behalf of Trinidad Chambliss tells you the answer to the question, why LSU was right to move on. I'll say it again. Would you love to have Trinidad Chambliss as your quarterback? Yes. Freaking amazing story. He looks like a young Russell Wilson out there, making plays, evading defenders, throwing dimes on the run, making plays with his feet. He is awesome, and he might be the reason why Ole Miss beats Miami and goes to the championship game and plays Indiana. It wouldn't shock me at all. He's awesome, and you'd love to have him. But there's no guarantees, which is why you had to make a calculated decision and say, do we wait and hope that he comes here and gets a waiver, or do you move on? Well, LSU made the decision to move on. And the fact that they are now filing a third waiver tells you and confirms and validates exactly what Ole Miss's concern was that he wasn't going to get the waiver. Well, now Ole Miss is the one that's in a really tenuous spot because they had moved on from Chambliss and they had put their eggs in the Austin Simmons basket. Well, Simmons wanted number one quarterback money. And we know what top quarterbacks are getting. They weren't going to give it to him. So he's at Missouri. Ole Miss pivoted to focus on Trinidad Chambliss. And if Chambliss doesn't get his year, they're in trouble. And maybe they pivot to Deuce Knight. But either way, the bottom line is all of the evidence suggests that LSU moving on from Chambliss because of the uncertainty was the right decision. So what do they do now? The other part of this that I think is fascinating is another thing that, again, had tip Ross Dellinger. He's on a heater. He reported the terms. He had leaked to him the terms of the offer LSU made for Brendan Sorsby. I want to get to that. Let me knock out this very, very quick break. Very, very quick. Come back, and I want to get to that. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. So Ross Dellinger reported that Sorsby was offered a $3.5 million third-party NIL deal from MMR. Now, you know MMR. It's a massive company. It's a billion-dollar company. It's owned by Pepper Rutland, who's a former LSU team captain in the 1970s. The MMR plane kind of became famous because the MMR plane is the one that picked up Lane Kiffin's family, Layla and the family, and brought him here for the visit. The MMR plane is what Lane Kiffin flew on to Baton Rouge on that Sunday when he was brought here to come as the head coach. Let me give you a brief lesson in how sometimes news is leaked. Sometimes you have to reverse engineer something. Who knows who would have had a physical copy of the offer from LSU to Sorsby? Well, Sorsby would have had it. His agent would have had it. People at LSU would have had it. Who else? Family, maybe close friend. That's really it. Those are the principles. So either someone at LSU or Sorsby, his agent, someone leaked that to Ross Dellinger. If I had to guess, LSU's probably not pumped about that information being out there, because when you're doing deals and you're making offers, generally you don't want the world to know what you're offering. It's almost like a closed bid situation, because if someone else knows your offer, they can bid against you. If you think your offer is really good, but someone's willing to offer more, well, they can come in and offer just above you and outbid you. Or, like, let's say hypothetically, it's a different type of situation where you're trying to win a job, you can undercut somebody. It's why you don't want your number known. Nobody wants to show their cards first. You lose leverage when you forfeit information. So LSU's probably not pumped about that information being out there. So my guess is Sorsby or his agent leaked that to Ross Dellinger. I don't know the answer. I would tell you. I know Ross well. He didn't tell me. He would never tell me that, by the way. Like, he would never, ever reveal a source like that to me. I've had so many conversations with Ross over the decade plus that he and I have known each other and been friends. But my guess is that Sorsby's agent leaked that. That's my guess. And probably did so thinking it was benefiting his client. But I'm going to put a different spin on that and assume that leaking that actually benefits LSU, and here's why. Yes, it's true that you put that out there and you know other prospects know what LSU has to spend. But remember, that was a third-party NIL deal. That was not revenue share. That was LSU's NILSU Max program, which we've talked about tons here. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me talk about it. That's an offer that LSU's NILSU Max program, its true third-party NIL program through Playfly Entertainment, put on the table for Sorsby. I have said so many times, there's a level playing field with the revenue share, $20.5 million. The differentiator for LSU is they have worked for 18 to 24 months to build their third-party NIL program, to have actual relationships with businesses queued up, ready to go, to plug in student athletes to be able to do third-party NIL deals. We just talked about it recently with the Nike deal that Nike did with LSU athletes. Well, here's one that LSU had ready to go for $3.5 million for Brendan Sorsby. There may be people on the other side of this conversation that think they're getting over on LSU, but what this actually does, if I spin it this way, what this actually does is show the world, hey, or student athletes, hey, while every other program is promising you NIL on top of your rev share, here's an example of actual true NIL, 7 figures on top of rev share. Others are saying that they can do it. Proof. We can do it. That is powerful. So if you ever are going to recruit against someone, you can say, can they actually deliver the third-party NIL that they're promising? Because we can. I'm not so sure that whoever leaked that to Ross Dellinger intended that to be the necessary reaction. Oh, but I think that is going to be in time the unintended outcome of that. Now, the Tigers continue rolling along here in the transfer portal, and Wednesday was a good day for LSU. And it's interesting because, man, I would love to talk so much more about all these players that LSU is adding via the transfer portal, and there have been many, many really good ones. And we will in time assess the roster, but the news is coming so fast and so furious. For LSU on Wednesday, they got started with Eugene Wilson committing, the wide receiver out of Florida, and that's a big one, man. LSU, we knew they had to remake their receiver room, and my goodness, have they done that, and this might be the biggest one yet. Eugene Wilson, he goes by Trey, has committed to LSU. He signed with LSU. He was a 5-star prospect when he signed with Florida in 2023, played 3 years with the Gators, 10 touchdowns, battled some injuries, but my goodness, when healthy, he is an incredible 5'10", 195-pound slot. He was a freshman All-American in 2023 when he had 61 catches. So Jackson Harris, Jace Brown, the number 3 receiver in the portal, Trey Brown, and now Trey Wilson, the 4 receivers on board for LSU. And then there were also 3 specialists. LSU landed the 2 specialists from Florida, the punter and the long snapper, both who were recruited to Gainesville by Joe Houston. Long snapper, Mac Mulhern, punter, Hayden Craig. By the way, I was told Grant Chadwick is expected to return, so Craig will compete with Chadwick for the punter job. And then the other big one is LSU apparently has their place kicker, Scott Starzik from Arkansas. It has in Baton Rouge, committed to LSU on Wednesday night, and he's expected to compete for the starting job. It is worth noting that Sean Perrette, the walk-on from Baton Rouge from Catholic High, is still on the roster, and they will compete for the job with the incoming freshman class as well. But Scott Starzik from Arkansas transferring into LSU. And one more worth keeping an eye on, I'll just tuck this one away. Jalen Brown from South Carolina, an edge rusher, expected to follow Sterling Lucas. I do believe he has committed to LSU, and we should get that announcement on Thursday. And we'll be talking about it right here on Locked on LSU. So do me a favor. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.